What is going on, guys? Welcome back to my channel. Yes, freshly shaved, well, kind of trimmed, and new haircut. Still kind of getting used to it. Not a huge fan of it. I am starting school up again. This is a big reason why I kind of got it trimmed. I will be shaving it completely off in like a week, and I'm kind of scared. But anyway, guys, that's not what I'm here to talk to you guys about. I'm here to talk to you guys about Aquaman. I finally got a chance to go out and see Aquaman tonight, and these are my fresh thoughts on Aquaman. So this movie picks up a little bit after the events of Justice League, and the only reason why I know that is because there's one reference in this movie in particular, and believe me, it's not a spoiler because it really has no significance at all, but they talk about how Aquaman helped save Atlantis by defeating Steppenwolf, and we know that that happened in Justice League. Now this movie follows Arthur Curry, who is played by Jason Momoa, also known as Aquaman in this film, and he is a half-breed, which means he is half human and half Atlantean. His mother was Queen Elena, who ended up getting washed upon on shore. It looked like she was, injured from battle, and his dad was a lighthouse keeper who fell in love with her. They had a baby, and Arthur is trying to find his place within the world. He lives on land, has never met his mom, and has never been to Atlantis, but he is the heir to the throne of Atlantis, and that is where this story takes us. This movie is visually stunning. That is the one thing I want to say right off the bat. This is eye candy galore. If you're a nerd like me, you are just loving every second of everything that's happening on screen. However, there are parts in this movie that I will say the CGI could have been better. It was a little lackluster. I felt like James Wan was trying to do so much, and I feel like post-production, they were trying to get it done so fast that some of the CGI kind of looks clunky. It kind of looks out of place, and it just doesn't really look realistic. And this movie is a fantasy movie. Let me just point that out. It's a fantasy movie. So it's not supposed to be realistic. But the CGI should be if we are creating this fantasy world. And that's the one thing about this movie is some of the CGI just kind of comes off as a little cheap, in my opinion. However, this is a fun, thrilling movie. What a fun ride this movie was. This was one of my most anticipated films of the year. When that first trailer dropped at Comic-Con over the summer, I was bonkers for this movie. I could not wait to see this movie. It was probably my most anticipated film at the end of the year, other than Halloween 2018. And this movie does something a little different than other superhero films, but however, it kind of is formulaic in nature. And the reason why I say it's kind of formulaic is you could take some elements from this film and apply them to Black Panther, and you could take elements from Black Panther and apply them to this film, because in this movie you have, on the left hand, you have Aquaman, who's fighting for good. He doesn't want to be a king. And then you have King Orm, who's his brother, and they have to fight for the throne, and it's kind of just like Black Panther, which we just saw back in February of this year, where you had T'Challa versus Killmonger for the throne. Now, it's not a problem, but does seem very familiar when you're watching it. It's like, I've seen this before. I kind of know what's going to happen. It does take some different turns, however, than Black Panther, obviously, and it's a very different film in nature, because Black Panther is more of a realistic film, and this film definitely goes for the fantasy aspect, and it's no longer kind of set in that precedent of the real world. Like, Aquaman doesn't exist. We know that. He couldn't exist. With the MCU films, it feels like Captain America is a real person. It feels like Spider-Man is a real person. Like, these are actual events that are happening in the world. But with this movie, it goes all for fantasy, and it definitely thrives because of that. So this movie is also, like I said, it's formulaic, but it's also very new. There are so many different elements in this film. There's one element of where we've seen it in other films before, but never used in a superhero film like this. There's a roof sequence where Aquaman and Mara are being chased by Black Manta and an army of Atlantean soldiers, and they have to kind of run up on top of these buildings, and it's kind of like a parkour sequence, and it's really cool, and it's something that we haven't really seen a lot of in other movies, because it's kind of just like one long shot for some of the scenes and that are happening within this same time frame, and it's just really cool, and it's shot in a different way than per se other films are. There are some slow motion shots that I feel in this film we could have done without, but some of them actually really fit the actual setting of what's happening in the story. This movie visually great eye candy. Story-wise, pretty generic. I mean, it's kind of cut dry, what you expect out of an origin superhero story. So nothing should surprise you, I guess I could say, in this movie. However, don't listen to any spoilers or anything. This is not a spoiler review. But nothing really should surprise you at this point. We've kind of seen this formula kind of transpire so many times before, and that's the one thing that kind of makes this movie a little less anticlimactic. I want to kind of go into a con here. One of the things that bothered me about this movie is this movie felt so long. And I think part of the reason why is the weighted down visuals. There's so much visuals in this film that it kind of just makes you tired. There's no boring parts in this movie. That's not the case. It's just there's so much going on that you feel like you've already sat through the 3 hours of the movie already, and realizing that you're only an hour and 15 minutes in, you're like, oh my gosh, I still have like another hour plus of this movie. And that's my one thing that I kind of didn't really like about this movie, is just all the weighted visuals just kind of make this movie feel really long. I remember my wife kind of turned to me and she goes, this movie's long. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, yeah, she's right. It kind of does feel long, like I was sitting in the theater forever. But it is a fun time. If you want something different from your typical DC films that we've seen in Justice League, Wonder Woman, Man of Steel, which is still my favorite DC film. That movie's amazing. I don't know why you wouldn't like that film. This is a great new direction for the DC universe. What a great palate cleanser to kind of step in to what is going to happen next for the DC universe. And it's a very glorified journey. This movie is very glorified, and it's visual eye candy for any nerd who is like me, who just loves seeing awesome effects on the big screen. But anyway, guys, this is my review for Aquaman. Let me know below in the comment section, what you think of Aquaman? Have you had a chance to go out and see it? Make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel if you're new, and as always, I will see you in my next video. Goodbye.